Hi, this is Greg Suddy, Study on Soccer. I'm with Robert Kristo. And Robbie, it's really good to have you on board today. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Suddy. Appreciate it.
So we're just going to get started with your story, because I mean, you have an interesting story coming from Croatia. What was the background of the reason for the family moving into the United States?
So, as most people know, there was a big war back home, the Yugoslavian War, the breakup of Serbia, Bosnia, and Croatia, and other smaller countries. But basically, my dad was fighting in it. And once the war was kind of slowed down, we got immigrated over to St. Louis, Missouri, with a huge refugee program that was part of the Bosnian and Croatian movement.
Well, that's interesting. So your dad was a soldier in the war.
Right. I mean, I think every male figure over the age of 18 was in that war at that time.
I guess that's probably true. When you guys came to St. Louis, was that just where you ended up, or was that an option that you guys chose, or how did that work out?
We ended up. That was chosen for us. We got accepted into the program, and they shipped us straight here. We went through New York on a plane, and then another plane to St. Louis, and that was it.
Now, you still have family in the area in Croatia, don't you?
Yeah, I think everybody, even my mom and dad are back there right now, but mom and dad live here in St. Louis. I'm about a mile down the road from them. And then everyone else is back there.
Wow. So how often do you visit them? How often do you go back?
So I go back. We try to go back every year. So I was there this last July. I was there for about a month, just enjoying it, taking the time off. And I mean, it's a beautiful little beach town. Split. I wouldn't say little, but it's a great little spot.
What community in St. Louis? I mean, I'm familiar with St. Louis and how the different municipalities are built all around the general city of St. Louis.
Yep.
When you say St. Louis, you could be talking about Hazelwood, or you could be talking about any number of different areas. I used to live in Woodson Terrace.
Okay.
And I was right across from the airport because I was working for the airlines. So I'm a little bit familiar with that. And that's not too far away from your high school that you went to.
Yeah, so I grew up in Maryland Heights, Creve Coeur, Maryland Heights area, and I lived there again. I moved back there and went to Parkway North. So, I mean, depends where you live in St. Louis. There is a difference, I will say. So
there is. Yeah, there really is. I had friends in Florissant, and I had friends that were down in the city. Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things I found really interesting about it was I never could figure out where the municipality lines were, because the area just sort of flows from one town to the next without any, demarcation. But every single town has their own police department, which I thought was really interesting. It wasn't all just, the St. Louis Police Department. Every little town has their own PD, identifying themselves pretty nicely.
Little unique thing about St. Louis and Baltimore, the only two cities in the United States that are different from metropolitan, their city area and their county line. They're not together. So that's actually one thing, which is what happens with all the different kinds of police officers. Every county has their own, and then St. Louis County has their territory. St. Louis City has their territory.
That's it's an interesting, coming from San Diego area, it was an interesting cultural difference, trying to get around all of that. And figuring all that out. Yeah. So you started playing soccer pretty much as soon as you got into St. Louis. I mean, you were like 5 years old when you got here, and about 5 years old when you started playing. Is that right?
Yeah. I started playing when I was 6. I think I started playing before I spoke English, to be honest with you.
Oh boy.
There's a big Bosnian/Croatian community. I would play with them growing up. And then once we ended up moving to the county, not so long after, I joined a CYC program called St. John Bosco. We'll never forget it. And I played 2 years up because my cousins played on the team. And then from that, I went into select, through the whole roller coaster of Bush Soccer Club, which was huge back in the day. And then we couldn't be sponsored by beer, so we went to St. Louis Soccer Club, which then became St. Louis Scott Gallagher.
Right.
went through that whole phase of that youth system, and then ended up staying at St. Louis University through my 4 years of college.
Right, but I mean, before that, I mean, when you started going to high school at Parkway North, um, you got, I mean, you were noticed. I mean, you were having successes early in your life on the soccer field. What I'm looking at in the notes here is you got team MVP, all conference, all state honors while you were playing in high school. Talk a little bit about your high school career.
High school was a blast. I just a lot of hard work. I was one of those guys that kind of just would do a lot of work in the backyard. We had a big goal set up in the backyard, a big lawn, so I could play a lot. So that got me going. And then high school was just awesome because I did have good youth coaching.
Nice.
Kevin Kalish, who is now the St. Louis University men's head coach. He was my youth coach. Tommy Howe, which is a big name in St. Louis in soccer. That was my youth coach. And I could just go down the line of the coaches I had. And then high school was awesome because I got to play with my best friends. So you just always wanted to get better.
So these are kids you've grown up with, huh? And played with as a youth?
Oh, yeah. So actually, out of our youth team, we had me, AJ Cochran, who is now at Charleston. He was a Generation Adidas guy. And then Tomas Gomez, also an MLS guy. We went to the national team U18s and U20s. Well, they went to the U20s, the U18s together for the U.S. And we're still close today. I actually got off the phone with Cochran this morning. But it's a small knit community. Like that soccer world in St. Louis, when people say it's it's the soccer city of America, I understand why, because I grew up in it. It's so tight and small.
Right. It's interesting, Robbie, because there's a lot of cities that try to claim soccer city of America. I know Dallas tries to lay on that claim somewhat. There are a number of, and I mean, heck, the National Hall of Fame is outside of Dallas, but there's all kinds of communities that kind of hold on to that. But I got to tell you, I mean, when I came to St. Louis, I would have been 26 years old at the time. I think I left when I was like 30 or 31. I was there for 5 years, and I was just amazed with how much back then, because this would have been the late 80s. And even back then, there was just so much love for the game. And I remember being in St. Louis when I'm pretty sure, if my memory is correct, that when the United States earned their World Cup berth for the first time in like 40 years. And they were going to the World Cup for the first time in like 40 years. And I remember being in that community when that happened. And I mean, it was, you'd have thought that the St. Louis Cardinals had just won the World Series.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing.
I mean, and not to, bark on the past, but even with St. Louis University being the most national titles in NCAA soccer, and I know they were all back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, but that's kind of where it started. And a lot of those guys were national team player guys that played for the national team for a good portion of the time and went out and worked for the national team. And it's got a lot of big names. For example, Tim.
Right.
I mean, it just, the list goes on about the St. Louis guys and kind of getting out of St. Louis and creating a pathway to pro sports and soccer and other sports too, to be honest. But
yeah, I mean, that's another thing. St. Louis sort of hit me as being a baseball city. I mean, they love their Cardinals.
Still is. They love their
absolutely a baseball city.
They love their Cardinals.
They sure do.
I never picked up on that trait just because I was a foreign kid growing up in St. Louis. So I didn't even know what baseball was. I knew one sport, and it was soccer. But if you're a Cardinal red through and through, and you'll see it if even when we don't make the playoffs. I mean, we didn't have a good year, but the stadium is half packed to packed every game.
Every game. 62 games a year, 61 games a year, whatever it was. No, 81. That's right. 162 games. So 81 games a year. And Busch Stadium. I went to the old Busch Stadium, the original Busch Stadium. And I would go because, of course, I'm from Southern California, man. And I mean, I'm not necessarily a Padre or a Dodger fan. I like them both and the Angels because they're in Southern California. But back then, whenever the Dodgers or the Padres came into town, I would go there, and I'd have to keep my mouth shut, because if I started cheering for the other team, there'd be somebody behind me that'd throw a beer on me or something.
I will say we are one of the friendliest fans in the world, and then I'm not used to that because in Europe it's completely opposite. But people are very nice in the Midwest.
Yeah, they
It's very weird, but it is what it is.
are. Yeah, no, it is true. There is a cultural difference in the way people interact with other people, with strangers,
Yeah,
stranger on the street. There's a
100.
way that you get that kind of interaction here in the West Coast. It's entirely different on the East Coast, and it's still
Yeah.
entirely different in the South, and it's still entirely different in the Midwest. And the Midwest people are just extremely friendly.
My
Um,
my fiance's
yeah,
from Baltimore,
okay,
and we moved to
okay,
Missouri. And I met her in North Carolina. I was playing North Carolina for the USL championship team, but um, I met her, and we moved to Missouri, and she's like, "Why are the neighbors talking to me?" And it's because people are just generally nice. They want to see how you're doing, and if everything's okay. And she's like, "In Baltimore, people don't
that's
talk to
right,
each other." It's just so
that's
that
right.
was a big culture shock to her.
That's right. I sort of got that kind of a thing. I was in New York City, and I sort of randomly, walking down the street, and I randomly said hello to the guy as I was passing him on the sidewalk. And I mean, he took it as aggressive. I mean, it was like,
Yeah,
who the hell are you to be? Yeah, who the hell are you to be talking to me? I don't know you. What's going on? What do you want?
100%. That's funny.
But that is not the case in the Midwest. It
No,
absolutely is not. One of the other things that I found really interesting in the neighborhoods that I was living in back there was nobody had fences. I mean, your backyard went, just the grass in your backyard just flew over to the grass in the other guy's backyard, over to another guy's backyard. There was no fencing around the property. And I found that really weird. It's like, don't you guys, no, we interact with our neighbors all the time. We have, barbecues with them every Saturday, and we all get together, and it's just a whole different
it's just a
environment.
friendly. The Midwest
Um,
is friendly.
so when you decided to go to university, you went to St. Louis University, as you mentioned, the Billikens, and yeah, there's a lot of soccer names that have come out over the years out of St. Louis University, a whole bunch of them. Um,
Oh yeah.
uh, Again, when you were in St. Louis at the university, let me first ask, what was it that made you decide to go to that school?
A lot of good reasons. I mean, obviously, it's St. Louis University. I mean, it was one of the top schools in the nation, soccer wise. As good program, good coaches, beautiful facility, and then it was home. And I grew up. I was 13 years old playing for Gallagher, and IU came to town. It was, I don't even know what year it was. It might have been '04 or '06, and it was SLU versus IU, the good old rivalry. And I was a ball boy, and the goalie from SLU that year threw me a ball, like a mini little blow up ball, and I was like, "This place is awesome." And so Kevin Kalish, the head coach now, was my director at Gallagher, but he was at SIUE trying to get me to go to SIUE. And Dan Donegan was the guy, the head coach for SLU at the time, and we were talking for me to go there, but he ended up leaving, going to Rutgers. So Mike McGinty, who was my coach that took the new job, recruited me the second day on campus when he got there. And he was actually living in an apartment on campus. And he called me in, and we toured the campus together. Like, he hadn't seen the campus. He was just there. So we toured it. We kind of got to know each other. And it was like, this is home. It was that simple. I only visited SIUE, SLU, and then I went to Dayton just because to use it, to see what it was like. But I had offers
Sure.
all around the country. I just didn't want to leave home, honestly. And I'm glad I didn't, because my college experience was one that I'll never forget. And whether that's soccer wise and the friendships I made. I mean, my roommate all of college was Raymond Lee, who plays for the KC Comets. And I mean, he's a big indoor name as well,
Right.
good left back, but and it's just, we just make good memories there. And I mean, obviously we were very successful.
Right. Well, and you got Rookie of the Year your first year there. You pick up a Rookie of the Year, 3-time All-American while you were there. I'm also seeing that you were semifinalist for the Herman Trophy 3 times while you were there. So you personally, not only the team, but you personally were doing well.
I was just a big guy scoring goals. I was kind of just staying up top. I had a lot of headers, had some free kicks, but I mean, we had a good team. And all 4 years, we had a good team of guys. What was it? My sophomore year was really good. We had like 4 guys go pro right off the bat. Then the next year, I think we had three or 4 guys go pro, and then my class, I think all 5 of my freshman starters ended up going pro by the time we got to our senior year. So we had a lot of talent on that team, and I mean, it was good coaching. It was like a family bond, obviously. And that's what happened with the success. I mean, it wasn't just me. I know I had good numbers and goal scoring and all that, but that team was incredible.
Yeah, and you mentioned your size. You're 6'5". You're not a small man. And on the outdoor field, there's definite advantages to that because, like you said, you can get up above the play. You can take passes in the air instead of to your feet, and then work those off the head. So, I mean, that's a huge advantage if you are good at it and can play it right. If you have if you're an athlete and can actually make it work to your advantage, which clearly you are. So that's a really interesting thing, though, that you have that you had the success all the way through. I mean, you were seeing success in high school. That success continues going through to college. Now, did you had mentioned that in high school you were playing with a bunch of kids that you had grown up with. Did any of those guys follow you to St. Louis University?
No, we actually went our separate ways. So Cochran went to Wisconsin and Gomez went to Georgetown. And that was just being because the class above me already had a top-notch goalie and a top-notch center back. And so there wasn't any really room at that time for them to go to SLU. But they all had great careers. I mean, they're still playing, honestly. They're still playing outdoor.
What league, what teams are they playing for?
So Cochran was Generation Adidas, went to Houston Dynamo, then went to Atlanta United, Phoenix, Indy, and now at Charleston. Tomas Gomez has been all over the league. He was drafted by Columbus, went to DC for a little bit. Then he was at San Jose, and then he went to, and now he's at Real Salt Lake.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you're in touch with these guys still to this day, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, they're some of my best friends. So I'm going to Gomez's wedding at the end of December here. He's getting married. Cool. And very cool. Actually on the route to retiring. So maybe we get him on the ambush here.
There you go. We'll go. See. You mentioned, hey, you just mentioned your friends getting married, and earlier you had mentioned your fiance. Right. Does that imply that you have a wedding date planned?
Oh, yeah. We are getting married September 7th. Her name is Lacey. Nice. We're getting September 7th of next year in Croatia, in my hometown.
Wow. Wow. That's huge.
That was all her. It was her wish. I wasn't even part of that. I wouldn't have minded getting married in St. Louis, but she wanted to do a destination wedding, and we have a perfect place for it back home. So we're doing it there.
And you had mentioned before we went on the air, you'd mentioned that your family has a home in Split.
Yeah, we have the home that we left. The home that we left. We have a beautiful little beach house. Right outside of Split. That we kept. We never got rid of when we left, and it's just been getting upgraded through the years, and that's where we go every summer.
Now, you may not know. You may know. I don't know, and I'm not 100% sure, but it seems to me like that's where Steve Zungel played soccer. Before he defected to the United States, was in Split. Am I correct?
I'm not sure. Was it for Hajduk?
Okay. I think so. Yes.
That's my club at heart. That's the club I support. When people ask me, everyone asks me, "What the heck is that?" It's my hometown
Right.
club, local club, big club in Croatia, Split Hajduk.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. I'm not positive on that question.
I believe that is. I believe that is the team. And here's one of the people in the chat room and says yes, that's correct. So
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. Of course, Steve Zungul, the Lord of all indoors guy.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
that when you mentioned the name of the city, I'm thinking, well, I'm pretty sure that's how I know the name of that city is
Yep.
because of Steve Zungul playing there before he defected to the United States. So I mean, you got all kinds of accolades and successes coming out before you go pro. And Robbie, when you decide to go pro, you end up going to Europe, first Italy and then Germany for like 4 years, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Talk about that decision and how that happened.
So the agent that I signed with was Pro Sports Management. Mike Gartland was his name. He had about 4 or 5 national team players at the time, and he called me. He goes, "Hey, look, you can get this with the MLS right now, signed deal, or you can go get more in Italy because you have a Croatian passport and you're a European citizen, and so there is no visa issue." And
wow.
I go, "Well, what are my options? Where can I go?" He goes, "Okay, let me look around." So in about a week, he calls me back. He goes, "There's this club in Italy called Spezia. They have a Croatian GM, they have a Croatian head coach, and they have about 7 Croatian players playing for them."
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, "You know what? Let's go check it out." So I flew over. I basically trained with the team for a week. I signed my contract, and it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life.
Wow.
The level.
Right.
I will admittedly say it was beyond me. It was above and it was next level stuff. And I had guys in front of me that were top notch Brazilians, Germans, Italians. I mean, on that team, that was a spectacular team I started out with. And I had some work to do because I was not at the level, to be completely honest. Coming from American soccer and American college, even.
Right.
The level was so it was a learning curve for sure, but I had some good mentors. Things went all right, and then I did end up going on loan for a couple of teams down there just because I wanted more playing time.
Gotcha.
And then, by the end of those 2 years, the second year, my head coach got fired because we were in third place going into the last 2 final games. We were going to go to Serie A, and we lost. And we had a great season, but we didn't make it up. So Bielitsa got fired, and he ended up going to a Champions League team anyway. But everyone scattered. We all left the club. I went up to Germany because basically when I was in college, Mike McGinty called me and goes, "Hey, my buddy is a coach at VfL Osnabrück. He's a second team head coach, and I called him about you, and they want you to come and take a look at you." So my sophomore year in spring break, I actually flew to Germany on a trial.
Interesting.
So they can take a look at me, and I made it, and they wanted to sign me on the spot. And McGinty looked at me and said, "No, you're not signing right now. I need you back in college." And it was a great decision because by the time I ended up finishing with Italy, Joe Enox, he played for the American national team. Actually, he had 1 cap. American guy. He became the head coach of the German team, and he called me over. He goes, "Hey, I'm the head coach. I'd like to have you." So I went over there, had some success, and then had a really bad injury that kind of knocked me out that last little bit, which is kind of why I ended up moving back to the States.
What was the injury?
Really bad ankle break. I had ligaments that were torn and ankle snapped. So basically what happened, no one really knows this story, but people that are close to me, they just know I had an injury. But basically we were supposed to go to Turkey for the winter preseason because in Germany it's very cold, especially in the North Germany where we were. But Turkey was in the middle of a war and we couldn't fly. So they ended up having camp at our home ground, and we had a turf field, and it was ice, and I just landed wrong, and someone came sliding through because it was slippery, and it just snapped. So I had to get surgery. I had the whole 9 yards. I was out about 11 months. 11 months that I actually got to play a game again. And then it was just tough. So I called it quits. Basically, after that, coach got fired. He got fired as well. Same kind of happened. We were trying to move up. We got 5th place in the league, and then it wasn't enough because it's a club that goes up and down a lot. Mm-hmm. So I was out, and I gave my agent a call, and I had a call from Dave Sarakin. I had a voicemail. I was actually in St. Louis training with STLFC back in the day, the USL Championship team, before City got here. Right. And Sarakin gives me a call, who was interim to the national team, and he said, "I'm taking over North Carolina. I'd love to have you." Went there for about 3 years, and then it was time to hang up my outdoor boots and hit my indoor boots.
So that's a great segue to the question of how much experience prior to the ambush did you have playing indoors? Okay.
Absolutely zero. And it was wow. I played indoor soccer when I was U11 and U12 in the winter with my youth club. And I cannot remember the last time that I had stepped on an indoor facility. And I have gone to one ambush game while I was playing in Italy because I had a mutual friend who was my teammate now, but Vadim Kozhikov was best friends with one of our best players at SLU at the time, David Graydon. They're both Irish. And I was like, "Hey, I'm in town to go catch a game for fun." So I caught a game, and Ray Lee was also playing for the KC. It was KC Ambush little game. And I went and watched the game, and I thought it was incredible. It was fun. It was electric. It was fast paced. Yeah. And, I never thought I'd go and play it, but here I am today.
Well, Robbie, one of the things that I find kind of interesting is about soccer in general, across the boards, every style there is that other than being in good shape, body size is across the board. I mean, you've got guys that are 5'6" that are playing. You got guys that are 6'5" that are playing as yourself. And I've asked I've talked with a couple of the smaller players, and I've asked them, how do you use your size to your advantage? What do you do, to make that work for your advantage? But let me ask you, because for me, now maybe I'm just seeing this from a fan's perspective, but I can see how the indoor game works for a smaller frame. But being a bigger guy, how does that adaptation work to your advantage, playing on that smaller field at that fast pace?
So, I mean, it's difficult because you're expected to be that big physical presence, and you're getting knocked, you're getting hit, and it's basically if you're a big guy, you're a hit or a defender. There's no in between. But I talked to our owner and our coach, and I said, I don't want to play target. I want to attack people. So they put me at second forward so I can get off the dribble, get my dribble off, and get a shot off. And I think this year I will be moving back to target. But it's different. The smaller guys, it's a technical game, right? And it's movement off the ball, and it's how well can you dribble and get a shot off, and can you beat a player 1v1 in small places or spaces and stuff like that? Right. And I wasn't used to that. It was difficult. Right. And don't get me wrong, for a big guy, I would say I have pretty good feet. I don't have Nick Pereira feet. I'll tell you that. That is a guy, when I watched him play for the first time in indoor soccer, I was in awe, because he can do stuff that no 6'5" guy should be able to do on the little field. But he does it. Incredible, and I've actually picked up a few things from him because he's one of the guys that you kind of look up to in the league, right? Especially when you're joining the league at first. Sure. And I have the opportunity to talk to Nick Pereira. We actually saw each other down at the TST tournament, and he's just an incredible role model as well. So you kind of try to pick things up, but it is a physical game. Going back to your question, it's just trying to use my body to shield guys off. But what people don't know about me is being 6'5", I still used to, I don't know if I still do, but I used to run a 4.45 40. So I used to be fast.
Oh my goodness.
And having a 6'5" guy as a striker that ran a 4.45 40 in outdoors is dangerous. It's tough to defend. And so in indoor, the only difference is I'm not quick. I'm fast, but I'm not quick. So in tight spaces, I'm not the fastest guy. So I have to use my body to shield and create space for myself.
Right. So how do you like the organization itself? I mean, now that you're part of it, this will be your third season. How do you like working with the front office or your teammates? What's your feeling in St. Louis?
It's good. It's just like, it's St. Louis. It's a soccer community, right? So it's very easy to come and just come together. It's very accepting. I have a very good relationship with our owner, who is also our GM and our head coach. But with Jeff Locker, and I have a good relationship with his sons, and because they're all great players. They play in the great academies and whatever. And obviously with Shelley too, they were just very welcoming.
Right.
Obviously success on the field helps to develop that relationship.
Right.
But the organization, I mean, every organization has its bumps and bruises. Obviously, from before I came to the Ambush, there were some pretty rocky seasons. Just the truth of it. Records and we had good players. We just couldn't figure out some stuff. So my first season, we actually made playoffs, and then last year we missed it. So it's a roller coaster sometimes, and that's just how pro sports tend to be. But I have no complaints.
You guys have sort of a close to home rivalries going on with Kansas City and Milwaukee. Those guys tend to be the ones that you guys, shorter road trips. You're not flying across the country and overnighting and stuff like that necessarily. All burned out from the travel. You guys get to know each other pretty well. What do you want to say about those two teams and those rivalries?
Most people would like to talk trash. I actually have a good relationship with a lot of the guys. Even on KC, I have a lot of good friends on that team. And I build relationships with me. Obviously, one being Raymond Lee. I mean, it's literally one of my best friends growing up and going through college. And then Milwaukee, when you play someone,
cool.
When you play somebody 18 times in a year, basically, you see them so much. It's 6 home and 6 away. You just develop a relationship where there is a little bit of I don't want to say hatred, right? But competition, because you see him so much, and it's a little different. For example, like we haven't even played San Diego ever. Well, I've been here. So I don't know. Other than watching them on Twitch, I don't know much about them. I can't even say anything about their players or relationship wise, but like there is a little bit of hey, let's beat these guys because they're our next door neighbors kind of thing. Let's it's a little bit extra, right?
Right. When I was in St. Louis, it was the end of the St. Louis Steamers and the beginning of the St. Louis Storm. The Kansas City Comets were active, and of course, I would follow. I would go to any game. I mean, I've been in indoor soccer, crazy for 40 plus years, and go to anytime it's available, anytime it's around, any league, any players, any team. And so when I was in St. Louis, of course, I took advantage of that. And there was a few times that I made the road trip on I-70 over to Kansas City, just to take in the game, even if it wasn't San Diego or St. Louis playing, just because, okay, there's a game in Kansas City. I'm going to drive to Kansas City and watch the game in Kansas City. So I'm quite familiar to, how close in proximity, I mean, geographically, how close in proximity. Of course, back then, Wichita was also a team in the first division. The Wichita Wings were in the first division back then. And that's also really close, relatively speaking, to the Kansas City area anyway. It's sort of like, if I can go to Kansas City, I can go to Wichita. It's not that far apart. They're just not that far apart. And I was looking at the schedule. You mentioned playing them, so many times, and I'm sure a lot of that for the scheduling has to do with travel expenses and arena availability and all that kind of thing. But yeah, it is. I think it was maybe 4 years ago. It might have been 4 years ago, maybe even 5. The last time San Diego came to St. Louis, And I can't remember the ambush in San Diego. I can't remember the last time I saw the ambush in San Diego.
Well, I got some good news. You're going to see them this year.
I know. That's pretty good. I know. I saw that. It's pretty exciting, because it is, like you say. I mean, we're the same way with Ontario, Tacoma. See them all season long. See them a bunch of times on both sides of the field. And when the team comes in that we haven't seen in a long time, that's really exciting. And get a chance to meet you in person as well. So the how did it happen that you got the call to come to the ambush in the first place? How did that actually take place?
It was kind of a joke, to be honest, and not a joke as in like it was funny. It was my buddy Otto Yahic that I knew growing up. He's a local Bosnian kid here, and he played Gallagher as well, and we knew of each other. And then he went to college. I'm I think 5 years older than him, but the community is so small, everyone knows each other. So he posted, I was in North Carolina, stopped playing, and I knew my time was coming to an end to stop playing outdoor. So he posted something about the ambush, and I write him on Instagram. I go, get me on the team, LOL. I don't know, something like that. And he goes, are you sure? And I said, yeah, why not? And fast forward 2 days later, the owner's calling my phone, and we have a good conversation. I was moving back to St. Louis regardless.
Right.
And we had a good talk. He kind of filled me in. We were getting a new coach that year, Greg Murr. And I didn't know much about it, but I was interested. And so we had some good talks, and then I finally came to a decision that I was going to do it. And so I show up. I was like, my outdoor season actually lasted longer than when preseason already started, and then I was still playing. So
okay,
that didn't end well with the other club, because I pretty much told the ambush I was playing for them before I actually retired from outdoors. So it was a little weird at the end, because my pro team was like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I told you I was retiring. I just didn't publicly tell people I was retiring, but from the outdoor game. And so that's how it happened. Right. I got on the phone with Jeff. I came into town when they had the little Midwest showcase where they played Wichita, and they played Des Moines, I think, came in town. And I watched them play because I flew in that weekend. I was moving a 25-foot trailer of stuff because we were moving from North Carolina to St. Louis, me and my fiance. And that's how it kind of just kicked off.
Wow, that's an interesting story. Now, your first year with the ambush was the COVID season, wasn't it?
No, it was after.
Oh, it was the year after.
COVID season was my last pro year. So I was still in North Carolina during the COVID season. And then the first year that COVID was cleared, but we obviously had to follow those protocols, was my first year.
Right. Yeah. It's great. That's a great story of how that happened. I mean,
yeah.
That's really a great story. So was it, I mean, you obviously were ready to leave North Carolina at the time, weren't you?
Yeah, I just knew I wasn't going to live there. I loved it. Don't get me wrong. Raleigh, North Carolina is incredible, beautiful city. And I actually might end up moving back there, but I actually proposed to my fiance there because that's where we met. So that's another funny story. At TST, I proposed the day before TST, actually.
Interesting.
So we're big Raleigh fans. And North Carolina is a beautiful little state. A lot of fun things to do. We were 90 minutes from the beach, 90 minutes from the mountains. I had made some really good friends there. I have a good group there. But St. Louis was always home. And I have a lot of friends that I grew up with here. And obviously the soccer community was huge here. So
Robbie, you've mentioned the TST tournament a couple of times. Talk about that. That was pretty fun.
One of the best experiences I've had in my life, to be honest. And a lot of the guys that play for the MASL, obviously the MASL boys won it. They were by far the best team.
Yeah, that's right.
I had a couple of ambush players on that team as well. but it was incredible. We thought it was going to be cool. It was cooler than cool.
Right.
I mean, it was
Right.
the stars, all the stars there. B, I got to see some ex players that I used to play with in the pros that I haven't talked to or seen in years. And I mean, they were in Germany. The guy in Germany I used to play against all the time.
Very cool.
I had guys MLS. I had guys that we used to play college against each other. I mean, it was incredible. And then the environment was set up. The fans loved it. The end on a goal rule. I mean, it was pretty incredible. I mean, it was a good time.
Right.
I don't think anyone would tell you different. I don't.
Yeah,
think
it
you
was.
go from all the guys. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun to watch too. I mean, Peacock covered it well. All the games were there. All the games were live. We could watch the teams, and as you say, there was so much MASL representation that as a fan of the MASL, you didn't have to go far away. I mean, it wasn't too far down the scheduling before you're going to see guys that you know and cheer for, on the field playing. And so there was as an MASL fan, it was, you felt invested in the event because there were so many different guys, I mean, you absolutely felt invested in the event. And what a great showing on the part of, not just Newtown Pride, but all of the different teams that were loaded with MASL players. I think the league actually showed what the players and what the style of play can do on a small A side field.
100%. I mean, it's very, very relatable, and you can tell Newtown literally ran plays that we played indoor without a wall, and they did a very good job at it. They were fun to watch. And they were a good group of guys that deserved to win. So
now, do you have? Are you going to be watching or following the World Mini Football World Cup coming up here in a couple of days?
I will. I have a couple buddies on the team, so I think that just for support, honestly. I don't know if we have an ambush player that was on the team, Sam Guernsey. I don't know if he's back from injury. He had a little bit of an injury, so I don't know if he's going to go to that in general. But I'll be following along.
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, it's sort of the same story as a TST in a sense because, the Brazilian team is going to have some MASL representation. Of course, the Mexican and American teams are both going to be almost exclusively MASL players. Yep. And then, of course, the Mexican team is the defending champions from the tournament down in Australia. So there's that. So, yeah, it's going to be kind of exciting to see how that plays out on the world stage. And then, of course, we've got, the league starts in a short order. The MASL season starts in short order. So we're excited to get that going. Robbie, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for sharing your story and going through your soccer journey with me, man.
Don't mention, man. It was fun to be on here. Anything we can do to grow this sport, man. The MASL needs a lot more recognition. They are a growing sport in this world, and one day, man, I'm hoping I can. So I attended those Steamers games back in the day when we rocked the stadium with 18,000 people, and to get back to that playing field would be very, very impressive.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, there are some cities around the country that are bringing in fans in the league. I'd like to see it all the way around. Obviously, everybody's going to smaller venues for the most part. 5,000-6,000 seat venues instead of the big venues like the Checker Dome was back in the day.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, I remember the Steamers and the Storm at the Checker Dome. I actually went to the NHL All-Star game at the Checker Dome. And that was, that was back in the late 80s or something. So, and that was a fun venue, but hey, I mean, it's like the one here in San Diego, the Pachanga Arena was built in like the 1960s. So it's time for it to go away. It's time for something. It's old, it's an old grandma, and it needs to be either rebuilt or renovated or something. And I think they're planning on doing that here in San Diego. So that just sort of happens. But yeah, having been a part of that and having seen all of that, it's it's a thing that I've never been able to get rid of. I mean, I've been following and trying to support this game as much as I can and do whatever I can. I'll tell you what, from where I'm sitting, the biggest problem I have promoting the sport is trying to get that promotion to people that aren't already fans. I mean, like right now, you see what I'm saying? I mean, like right now here on this show is being shown on 3 different places, but none of those places are going to be seen or recognized by somebody who's not already a fan. And that's
100%.
one of the reasons I like, yeah, and it's difficult. That's one of the reasons I like the Twitch broadcast, because I mean, I think that it needs to go elsewhere for sure. But what the Twitch thing does, I think that is advantageous, is it accesses people that aren't fans. I mean, they're on the Twitch channel and they say, "Hey, what's this indoor soccer thing?"
Right.
And it brings it brings attention to that.
I think, in my opinion, and I'm no crazy businessman, but I'm going to use the comparison. Look at the XFL. The XFL didn't really stand out, and then some big famous person threw a lot of money into it and used name, and everyone knows him, The Rock Johnson, right? The Rock put it on a little showcase, and it kind of blew up. And so I think we're one step away from soccer's growing, okay? And St. Louis City just got a team, and we're sold out every game, and we're top of the West Conference. Or we're really good. But you have all these famous people now investing in pro soccer teams. And before you know it, the MASL hopefully will get to a certain level. It spikes interest in those kinds of people who can promote it with more than just the original fans. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've heard someone else say that too earlier on, that bringing in, a name person, and it's been, I mean, it's not a new thing. Elton John used to own the Los Angeles Aztecs back in the old NASL. So I mean, there's not, it's not unusual in the story of soccer for these names, whether they're musicians or superstars in movies or whatever, to do it. But and to your point about the St. Louis City, I mean, the MLS impresses the heck out of me. I mean, how many people are going? Crazy fans. I went up to an LAFC game recently, and they've got the supporter group off at the end zone and beating their drums and making their smoke and waving their flags the entire game. I mean, it has an international feel to it.
It's getting there. Give it some more time. America's a few years behind that European fan base, but I mean, you look at some of those, and I'm just going to talk about City because I've been to City. The atmosphere is electric, and it might be. Don't get me wrong. I know Portland has a great atmosphere. I know Seattle has a great atmosphere. I know LAFC has a good atmosphere. But if you know anyone that went to the St. Louis City game as of recent this year, they'll tell you it's up there. It's unbelievable. I'm not just saying that because I have buddies on the team or I'm from St. Louis. It was real. I went to the last game against Sporting KC, and I had chills in warmups because of the songs. So cool. It's all getting there. So hopefully some of those fans could actually, slide on over to the winter season for the ambush. We'll see how that goes.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully that kind of thing works. I mean, unfortunately, I think a lot of times you get this sort of ritualistic support. If I like outdoor soccer, I'm not supposed to like indoor soccer kind of crap.
I think they go hand in hand. I think it's a different little experience, a little more fast paced, a little more energetic, I want to say. But I mean, we'll get there.
Yeah. All right, Robbie, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. I'll be looking forward to meeting you when you guys come to San Diego this season.
Awesome, Sonny. Thank you for having me, brother. Take it easy.
All right, you too, bud. Thanks.